So yeah, I think we'll start with just casual introductions. So we can introduce ourselves, then you can introduce yourselves, and then I'll kind of like read just like opening context, and then we'll set the timer. So I'm Melissa Fitzpatrick. I'm a professor of ethics and sustainability, business ethics and sustainability.
My name's Dan Koskovich. I'm a certified public accountant. I've spent most of my career as a chief financial officer for private equity companies, and have dealt with lots of ethical issues over my days, and so I'm looking forward to the presentation.
And I'm Chicky Bianco. I work in the entertainment business. So I focus mostly on television, the television industry.
And then you want to introduce yourself? So just where you're from, yeah.
We can go first. We're from the University of Maryland, but my name is Neha. I'm a junior. I'm a computer science major, so it's a little out of our element, but we're kind of just
going for it.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah. And I'm Zoe Luca, information science major, as well as junior.
Yeah, my name is Olivia Kuznetsova. I'm a junior. I'm studying economics and computer science.
I'm Clara Hong. I'm also a junior, and I'm studying computer science and math.
I'm Anna Cron, and I'm studying accounting and information systems, and also hoping to be a CPA. So
Oh, there we go. Amazing job, Dan. There we go. We need all of you as tax season is underway. So just kind of to read a general opening, in this part of the competition, you're taking on a fictional business identity and assigning a fictional business identity to us. Make sure everyone knows who everyone is. Before you begin, you'll have 25 minutes to describe the legal, financial, and ethical dimensions of the problem and to recommend a solution that passes muster on all three counts. You guys will be uninterrupted in the first 25 minutes, then we'll ask questions for 10 to 15 minutes. And during that whole time, we'll stay in character. Then we'll have time for a little bit of informal feedback when the roles end. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay. The floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, judges, for being here. Our team, EcoEdge Consulting, is proud to present Rice to the Rescue, a sustainable solution to Bangladesh's sand mining crisis. My name is Neha next slide, please. My name is Neha Viragundam.
I'm Zoe Luca.
I'm Olivia Kuznetsova.
I'm Clara Hong.
And I'm Anna Cron.
In this presentation, we will be covering the background and problem, audience, solution, as well as legal and financial aspects. Next slide, please. So let's get started with the background. Sand is the second most consumed resource in the world after water. We use it in everything: electronics, asphalt, roads, as well as concrete. It's dubbed the new gold, considering the global tax that it takes on the economy. We have countries with super big economies like China and India and the UAE as some of the biggest consumers of sand globally. We also have countries like Singapore, for example, who import many massive tons of sand to reclaim land through land reclamation. So moving forward, could you use the next slide, please? In Bangladesh specifically, sand is very important. In the South Asian region in general, including Bangladesh, India, and Nepal, sand is very stressed as it's a very growing economy, and sand is useful and essential in concrete and building blocks of infrastructure worldwide. So in Bangladesh specifically, 60 to 70% of sand mining is illegal and unregulated. As you can see, that is a pretty big issue moving forward. There's also concerns about working conditions, unethical labor, child labor, as well as distrust in government as these practices continue. Can you next slide, please? So some very obvious economic and financial costs of sand mining. So 20 out of 64 districts nationwide in Bangladesh are impacted by sand mining. There's loss of farmland, there is infrastructure deprecation like bridges, roads, schools, houses, as well as a loss of tax money from illegal sand mining. Next slide. We also have environmental and human costs of sand mining. So it can disrupt entire ecosystems in the area as wildlife populations shrink due to sand mining sediment being displaced into the waters and rerouting fish migration routes. Also, that leads into humanitarian impacts as those fish migration patterns change. Fishing regions in the area are affected with lower quality, lower income of fish, as well as the national food supply through loss of farmland, as well as the loss of fishing revenue. Next slide, please. So now I'll be passing it on to my partner Zoe, who will talk more about our sustainable focus, as well as wholesome and your problem in our solution.
Thank you, Neha. So our solution supports Sustainable Development Goals 12 and 14, which focus on protecting our oceans as well as consuming resources responsibly. And this really aligns with our audience's mission, as well as their goal to build sustainably. Next slide. So now that we kind of understand the current challenges that they're facing, as well as the sustainability goals, let me introduce you guys to our audience. Next slide. Wholesome Bangladesh. Wholesome Bangladesh is the second largest construction company in Bangladesh, and they are backed by an investment foreign grant that is about $500 million. And because of this, it's actually the largest that they're able to have in their country yet. And they have used this not only for their infrastructure and creating construction materials, but they've also used it to make their flagship plant in Chittik, as well as 3 grinding locations across their country. And more importantly, they're committed to sustainability. And so we can see this through one of their initiatives that they have called the GeoCycle, in which they are constantly rethinking new ways to use the waste that they have from their construction materials to find new ways to use it to make resource for construction or different tools, so it's not just pollution or a byproduct. Next slide. And we actually reached out to Wholesome and had a meeting with them to get feedback. And we also presented our idea with them and got feedback, as well as seeing it really be implemented into their current operations that they have, and also their sustainability goals. And through that, we really learned about the circular economic, as well as what they're doing in their environment and the product themselves. Overall, seeing how they're already doing things in Bangladesh and how we can further implement our solution coinciding with them. So next slide. And furthermore, Wholesome doesn't only talk about sustainability, but they actually implement it. This is something that was really emphasized in our meeting with them. And we kind of see this within their ethical framework, in which we can see in many dimensions that they have a lot of initiatives that they're putting into play. And within their ethical considerations, which we kind of tried to align with our own ethical process, a lot of these campaigns align with a lot of the issues that are going on with sand mining. For example, marine preservation. They have a campaign going on where they're building different marine-friendly constructions and infrastructures to help marine life and rebuild coastal lines. For example, creating artificial reefs that are going to help create biological colonizations faster, which can really be helpful in Bangladesh, where the shorelines are really vulnerable, as well as marine life is depleting. Another goal of theirs is their net zero journey, in which they're committed to being net zero emission by 2030. Currently, their carbon footprint when it comes to reduction is about 60.9%, and about 38.9% of that comes from their actual production of construction materials. And so they're trying to find alternative solutions, specifically with waste materials or byproducts, to kind of combat that. And they're aiming to create about 8 million tons of net zero construction materials each year from 2030, which is amazing, and really aligns with the kind of candidate that we're looking for our alternative solution. And lastly, they not only care about the environment, but also the communities in which they're operating in. So they actually have a lot of programs where they work with volunteering, as well as training and educational programs for the citizens of these communities to provide them with employment and career development, which is amazing. And they've been found to also employ about 10,000 million families and provide them with income, which is quite amazing. And overall, all these factors kind of work together to prove how they can be a great company to provide an innovative, sustainable solution for sand mining. Now I'll be handing it off to Olivia to talk about our solution.
Thank you so much, Zoe. So I'll go to the slide. So at Wholesome, you're already a leader in sustainable construction. Next slide. But we have an opportunity that we think that can strengthen your leadership, and we can do this by reimagining one of your most fundamental ingredients, sand. So we propose that Wholesome Bangladesh integrates rice husk ash, or RHA, into your ready-mix concrete product line. This is how it works. You're going to start by having Wholesome partner with local rice mills producing RHA as a waste byproduct, meaning that this product is already costing close to nothing. Next, the RHA will be processed and integrated into the ready-mix concrete, and this would replace up to 40% of the currently used sand. Finally, Wholesome would market this new blend as a sustainable, affordable alternative that not only cuts costs, but aligns with Bangladesh's environmental priorities. So the way that our solution works is that by replacing some of the sand with RHA, we will be cutting back on the need for mined sand. In fact, in our conversations with Wholesome professionals, we found that they're already looking for solutions for this problem. In Michigan, they're looking at recycled glass, and in New York, they're looking at copper slag as an option, but nothing has been completely implemented yet, which gave us the opportunity to swoop in and think about RHA as a product that they would really want to use and are currently looking for. Next slide. So this is not just a material substitution. This is a strategic evolution to your product and brand. But what even is rice husk ash? Next slide. RHA is the leftover ash from burning the outer husk of a grain of rice. And rice is a product that Bangladesh produces in enormous quantities. These husks are typically combusted as a fuel source for creating electricity. And the RHA that's produced contains really high content of silica, which makes it a really great pozzolanic material that chemically bonds with cement to enhance concrete. So what's important with this product in RHA is that it's a waste product, meaning that it's already being produced in bulk and being dumped onto streets as it's hot and still toxic. In addition, so by doing this, in addition to curbing sand mining and reducing the need for mined sand, we would be taking a waste management problem and turning it into a supply chain opportunity. Next slide, please. So moving on to why RHA is a great solution for specifically Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, they produce approximately 39.3 million tons of rice each year, making them one of the top 3 rice-producing countries in the world. With this vast production, they have significant amounts of RHA that are already being produced, so nearly 3 million tons are being produced each year, which can be directly used in concrete mixes. But currently, this material is severely underutilized. As I started saying earlier, it's being dumped onto streets, it's being forgotten about, and these streets are places where people have children, homes, and families, and so it's basically just hazardous waste. Rather than allowing for this product to continue to be unsafely dumped and inefficiently burned, we suggest that Wholesome has the opportunity to intercept the stream of waste and use it to help not only their own operations, but the rural communities of Bangladesh. Next slide. Now let's talk about performance. So research shows that RHA can replace up to 40% of sand in concrete mixes. Next slide. Which we found that in studies, such as one study published in the Institute of Physics, Material Science and Engineering Conference Series, in concrete mixes with 30 to 40% RHA, they've achieved comprehensive strengths of up to 22.4 MPa, which is well above the structural sand standard, or structural concrete standard. But performance goes beyond just strength. The great part about RHA concrete mixes is that they're not just environmentally friendly, they're also stronger over time. So the high silica content of RHA, which is up to 95% or 97% of the ash, reacts chemically with the concrete that you mix it in with the ready-mix concretes to create stronger bonds that create longer-term durability. And one of the biggest issues with current conventional concrete mixes is the permeability aspect. So current conventional concrete has issues with water, salt, and chemicals that would break down the concrete from the inside out. The great part about RHA is that it's denser and less porous, making it much better at curbing water absorption, which, sorry about that. So it would be much better at stopping corrosion and deterioration, and that's very important in an environment like Bangladesh, as we mentioned earlier, which is extremely flood-ridden. Finally, RHA is also known to be a great insulator, so it would do a great job of regulating indoor temperatures in hot and humid climates like Bangladesh, keeping electricity costs down and keeping the buildings energy efficient. So overall, RHA is not just a sustainable filler, it's a performance enhancer that enhances the strength, durability, and energy efficiency of the concrete market. So now I'm going to pass it over to my teammate Clara, next slide, where she will talk about the legal considerations of this solution.
Thank you, Olivia. Next slide, please. Okay, so next I'll be outlining the current laws and regulations that govern sand extraction and construction materials currently in Bangladesh. So while there is global recognition of the sand mining crisis, there have been no attempts to unify the various regulatory frameworks from different countries. However, in 2019, the UN Environmental Assembly adopted Resolution 19 and later reiterated it in 2022. And basically, Resolution 19 aims to target mineral resource governance. And then it also tasks a subsector of the UN to look for more information about sustainable processes, and then also to, in addition to sustainable processes, to look for better management strategies for sand. However, since sand is typically a locally used resource, it's difficult to have, like I mentioned, a regulatory framework for internationally, and typically sand regulation is informed by local geography and governance. In Bangladesh, the Sand Quarry and Soil Management Act, which was implemented in 2010, prohibits any sand quarrying within 1 kilometer of infrastructure such as roads and bridges. However, due to the loose however, since there isn't a lot of regulation on it, typically sand extraction does occur outside of the legally allocated land. However, in 2023, the Bangladeshi government did propose a new amendment to the act with stricter regulations. Some of the regulations included that if it was seen that there could be possible damage to cropland or farmland, then sand mining would be prohibited there. Additionally, it also required the use of hydrographic surveys to decide like quarry boundaries to prevent the use of sand. And then lastly, it also allowed for the legal seizure of tools and tools and machinery that go into illegal sand mining, and it also fined the responsible party, as they have to incur the cost of any damaged infrastructure due to things like the sand transportation. So unfortunately, there are no official statistics that track the use of sand mining in Bangladesh, specifically illegal. So it is hard to kind of show the efficacy of the amendments. Yes, next slide, please. Okay. So, however, we can consider some sustainability initiatives that complement these regulations. Within, there are several sustainability initiatives that the Bangladeshi government is pushing, one of them being the National 3R Strategy for Waste Management system. It promotes the reduce, reuse, recycle strategy, and basically it wants to target waste management issues since it's a growing challenge within the government, as you mentioned with the RHA. So basically, the 3R strategy aims to reduce dependency on river sand, which would help protect ecosystems, as well as curb illegal sand mining. And it also aims to reuse agricultural waste. That way, typical waste, such as RHA, can be turned into valuable construction inputs. Additionally, there's also the Promoting Sustainable Build project, which is funded by the European Union and is under the Switch Asia Funded project. It aims to promote sustainable building practices throughout Asia, and ultimately the project aims to improve energy efficiency, lower emissions, and reduce the impact of brick manufacturing. So in this context, we provide Wholesome the opportunity to introduce a eco-friendly brick alternative that is like a good solution to the traditional concrete brick. Okay, so moving on, we need to ensure that our solution, our sustainable solution, meets the safety and performance requirements that are already established by the Bangladeshi government. So the Bangladesh National Building Code outlines pretty much all of the requirements for concrete, specifically the coarse and fine aggregates from natural sources for concrete. BDS standard outlines the properties that coarse and fine aggregates such as sand and RHA need to meet. The purpose of this is to help, is to consider like current standards and materials and practices that concrete has to meet. Some of the requirements include minimum compressive strength, which varies for the type of building that the concrete is being used in, as well as durability requirements such as exposure to different elements such as water, brackish water, as well as considering corrosion protection. Yes. So now I'll pass it on to my teammate Anna, who will outline the financial aspects of our solution.
Thank you, Clara. So circling back to our solution, you might be wondering why we suggest Wholesome focus more time and energy into their ready-mix concrete solution division when they're already such a leader in cement mix. Next slide, please. So as you can see from the graph on the left, the ready-mix concrete market is actually steadily growing within the next 10 years at a 5.3% compound annual growth rate. And the Asia-Pacific region, which Bangladesh falls under, has a high share in this growing global market as well. In addition to the market growth, we can also see a general greater need for an efficient and readily available concrete mix solution in Bangladesh due to rapid urbanization and more increase in construction processes, specifically in the capital of Bangladesh, which is Dhaka. And this is all creating a rising need as well as a growing market for ready-mix concrete solutions. And while there are currently competitors already in this space in Bangladesh, we believe that Wholesome Bangladesh will have a leg up, especially if they implement the second prong of our solution, which is RHA, because it will establish them as a sustainable leader that has a different edge to the competitors. Next slide, please. So now to jump into how much the actual RHA portion would cost. So we did an estimate that the current cost annually that Wholesome Bangladesh is spending on sand in their current ready-mix method is about $3.7 million. And to find this cost, we split it up into the main three cost drivers that influence how much it would cost to acquire this sand. So materials acquisition, transportation, and storage. So yeah, that did total to about 3.7 million. And so now let's see how much it would cost with our RHA solution, which would be 30% sand and 30% RHA and 70% sand. It would actually be only about $2.9 million annually in starting costs for the RHA addition. And one of the most notable differences that we can see is that the proportion of materials acquisition that goes into total annual costs actually decreases because, as Olivia mentioned, RHA is a waste byproduct, so Wholesome could purchase it from rice mills for little to no cost. We did price it at around $6 per ton, just based off of the wages expenses that rice mills typically pay their workers, just so that we can ensure that they have an incentive to give us their RHA rather than just simply throwing it away, and to ensure that we have enough rice husk in the supply chain to fulfill the processes that we will be going through. Next slide, please. So now looking ahead into what we think Wholesome should do in the future as they go about implementing this solution, as well as outside factors. So we did create a 10-year roadmap of a recommendation for Wholesome. And circling back to the financial analysis, in the years 1 through 3, we suggest that the most important thing is to minimize the amount of upfront costs. So typically in the long term, the RHA solution would have fairly high transportation and storage costs. However, in the financial calculation, we recommend that Wholesome start out by simply renting warehouse space in dry warehouses across the capital of Bangladesh for storing the RHA, which would be cheaper in the beginning. And we also recommend that they start by sourcing their RHA from nearby rice mills, which there are a few reputable rice mills close to within 100 kilometers of Dhaka that would make transportation costs not as high in the very beginning. So starting with this slightly more economically feasible starting costs, they can start scaling up to in about year 5 of the plan, they could start looking into buying or building their own RHA storage facilities using the funds that they save from the lower material acquisition cost, as well as potential investments or government grants from marketing their RHA solution. And this would create a long-term asset that they can use to, in the long run, to store all of their RHA and save costs far more into the future. And then finally, around the end of our 10-year roadmap, we recommend that Wholesome start partnering with rice mills in Nagon, which is a bit farther away from the capital city, but that is where the most rice mills are located, with about 1,200 mills in Bangladesh. So that would be the best long-term partner for Wholesome to partner with. So since transportation costs would be a bit higher, that's why we recommend doing that towards the 10-year mark, just so that they have enough money initially to focus on R&D and testing and so forth. But overall, in the end, we do recommend they partner with those facilities, and that could also increase the amount of RHA they're able to receive, and they could put those into their own personal warehouses to increase the amount of RHA ready mix they're able to produce and send to the market. Next slide, please. So just to wrap up our presentation, I'll be going through some headwinds and tailwinds that could be affecting our solution, headwinds being outside forces that are working against our solution, and tailwinds being outside forces that are working with our solution. So in terms of headwinds, RHA production is very dependent on rice paddy cultivation in Bangladesh, so it's important to keep that in mind, that if there are any economic events such as regulated trade bars, or if there are any environmental events like droughts or different things that could just decrease the amount of rice that's being produced in general, that has a direct impact on how much RHA we're able to get for our concrete mix. So that is important to keep in mind. And then also, as Neha mentioned, there is corruption from influential sand miners that can make threats or have bribes that can potentially lower companies' want to jump into RHA right away. And then in terms of tailwinds, we are seeing that the cost of sand is rising gradually. Because sand is a limited resource, companies are charging more for sand because it's going to be harder to come by as the years go forward. And also, people are having to travel farther to get sand, since sand is being depleted from nearby resources. And this would cause more companies to look into sustainable solutions. But if Wholesome starts now with the RHA implementation, they'll have a leg up in the competition and have that solution ready. And then finally, with the cultural shift in companies looking towards more low carbon use, especially in the construction industry, having a solution like RHA would very much increase Wholesome's reputation, as well as their ability to market to new customers and investors, which could bring in more funds as well. And also that increases the potential for grants either from the government or from the global Wholesome subsidiary. Next slide. So that is it for our presentation. Thank you so much for being here today, and we would like to open up the floor to questions.
Thank you so much. I'll ask the first question. I apologize when the door opened. Maybe you covered this, and I just wanted a bit of clarification. So the environmental impact is clear in terms of how this is positive shift. I also see how it's cost effective. That's been pretty clearly argued. I have kind of a two-part question. Can you clarify or flesh out what the ethical value is that this is promoting? So what exactly is this doing? How is this partnership ethical? And to sort of build off of that, how specifically will this help the rural communities that you propose we'll be partnering with?
I can take this question. So basically for the ethical impact, since Wholesome is a company that has a lot of initiatives in place to kind of rebuild the actual area that's being affected by sand mining, they can kind of put that into place. For example, like I mentioned, the marine preservation, kind of going in and kind of restoring that coastal line with like the artificial reefs to put more fish back in there so that families in the rural areas can kind of have food to eat. As well as also going net zero as well. So there's a lot of pollution also in Bangladesh. So additionally going net zero emission could really be helpful for Bangladesh and decrease on the pollution that they're currently experiencing. And also in like the rural areas, the company currently has a lot of initiatives in which they're providing education and jobs for rural areas surrounding it, whether it be indirectly or directly. So I think that could be really impactful, replacing any jobs or jobs that come out of illegal sand mining.
I can also add on to that real quick on a different sort of leg of that same answer. I think that apart from helping from the sand mining crisis, just an additional benefit to the rural communities is that waste problem that we're having in Bangladesh. So the rural communities are suffering from having this toxic waste genuinely just piled up on the streets. Throughout our research, we've seen news articles of children who have gotten legs completely burned from this chemical that is just on the streets. So by taking this RHA and not letting it be dumped, we would be also just having the added benefit of saving these rural communities from the waste, which I think definitely ties into ethics, at least in my opinion, that we are hurting the community less.
Would you say that there's still a little bit of an ethical dilemma in the fact that we're trading off perhaps what you're defining as a more environmentally safe environment for the local people, with the fact that it seems that a very large number of people in the population are getting their primary source of income from being participants in the sand mining operations. So how do you weigh the balance between the dilemma that you'll be taking wages away from a large part of a poor rural population and being able to only reverse that with saying, but the streets will be cleaner?
Yeah, I can take that question. So there are some other features that Wholesome does. I believe they go into communities in the area and they provide job training, and they kind of I think around 10,000 in the past they had done jobs for training in that rural areas. And I believe that Wholesome also in this case in Bangladesh would be able to go in and see who used to be illegal sand miners and who is out of a job with the replacement of RHA and sand, and offer them an opportunity to move into this legal and Wholesome backed business, and also to clarify just how much RHA will affect illegal sand mining. It's kind of hard to track which sand is illegal and which is not in Bangladesh, and we would only be replacing about 30% of sand, so there will still be an increase of sand. We're trying to decrease the child labor, the unsafe working conditions that already exist through illegal